Oh, okay. Hey, everyone. So let's start this thing. If I curse a lot, I apologize. So, yeah. So I'm not sure. My name is Daniel. I've been a product designer in the Bay Area for about 12 years. I've worked on design systems. I've worked for agencies, for big products, and I currently work on a spatial design tool called Bezier right now. Today, we're just going to go on a crazy tour of my brain and the future of design in spatial computing, especially for Apple Vision Pro. So, quick tangent, hitting history, how Apple's changed the games, where they've fallen short, where I think we're actually going to go, and Q&A. So, quick question. So I just want to get this out in front. So, design is inherently more than aesthetics. Design is about strategy, it's about defining constraints, discovering and solving problems, and gathering signal as fast as you can to make money, essentially, and solve people's problems. But really good design is all about history. So, as I say, history rhymes, and well, I think Mark Twain said that. But what also takes time is maturity. Now, flat design today is very, very mature, but it took about 12 to 13 to 15 years to get there. And back in the day, when I was growing up, we had these little machines called computers that were about, $8,000, $10,000 to get, and mobile phones were even more expensive. When the original iPhone came out, there was little to no content, and to actually prototype anything on mobile design was just a nightmare. I'm not sure if anyone had to do mobile prototyping back in the day with paper and a pen. And during this time of how this world evolved in the digital age, there's a lot of skeptics. The internet, blah, the internet may just be a passing fad. And this was in 2000, which is freaking crazy. But it's very, very similar to where we are in XR today. But we made it through in the flat world. We made a shitload of money, and the value prop of XR was obvious. But today, the XR climate mimics a lot of the early PC era, and it is very expensive. The core demographic is children for the most part, and there is very few value props for consumers. So I'm just going to we have to talk about the XR Valley because we right now are in the XR Valley. Now, there has been a lot of things about XR that I have really loved, but there's been a lot of naysayers like any new technology. And a lot of my friends and people in SF, they don't even care that much about this they think it's a new passing trend like crypto, if anything else. But why is that? Well, I think the way that as designers we try to tackle XR and designing for XR is like we're trying to tackle an existing medium. The mobile phone was really an amalgamation of multiple jobs to be done, so we inherently understood the value of those jobs. But those jobs, for the most part, were kind of an amalgamation of flat jobs. And we also have to, as XR creators, we have to manage the esoteric expectations of the new digital age. A lot of people really see, I'm really juiced as a goose for Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, and the expectations of those graphics fidelity. But then you have Mark Zuckerberg with Horizon Worlds showing off all these things, and people say, well, one, why isn't it the same? Why can't it just be the same? Why can't it be ergonomically powerful? Another thing is that the Windows-based workflow of the flat world just really doesn't work that well in XR at the moment. We're just trying to take something that existed in the 2D realm and kind of throw it in the XR medium, which isn't really taking advantage of the value prop of XR. And another thing that sucks is that people often choose convenience and comfort over immersion, and this has always been the case. And I mean, I spend more time in front of my phone than I do my television, and that's freaking crazy. Why would I put on a headset? So I'm just keep ragging on this shit. Another thing that sucks is that XR is saddled by the predecessor shortcomings that we can't solve ourselves. The app-to-app model doesn't work anymore. We live in a sea of applications. It just absolutely sucks. And this flat, transition between the flat and to the 3D world doesn't work. And a lot of my design friends, they don't know how to design with depth. they just have been going from screen to screen to screen. And I piss off a lot of designers because I call myself included really good menu designers, because that's what we are. We design menus. And because of that, we haven't been able to take advantage of depth. We have little to no guidelines. The HIG has been kind of helpful, but there really hasn't been an established vocabulary that we internally can even talk clearly with. And that's when Apple Vision Pro came out. Now, Meta has been around for a long time, and their guidelines are I think they're better in many ways than the HIG. But the HIG has what Apple has done is what they do well, is they know how to cut the bullshit, cut it down to exactly the bare essentials, and build a really solid foundation. And with that, there isn't this battle between AR versus AR versus VR or XR or MR. It's just immersion. They blended it all together, and they have streamlined it. And it just made it really, really easy. And with that, they've also crafted a lot of rigid and vague, guardrails to put people on to get us there. So in Apple Vision Pro, or Apple visionOS, they have this foundational framework of windows, volumes, and spaces. Windows are essentially places where you can house 3D content, a little bit of 3D content, maybe about just a little bit, but it predominantly houses video, type, and other forms and stuff like that. And it automatically will scale itself to the user. So a lot of the time, especially when designed for meta stuff, you had to really understand how far the user was from you. Apple has basically built that in, and it will actually scale typography and content in real time. Now, this was a pain in the butt before, and Apple has just cut that middle way out. If you had talked to a lot of designers today, especially if they're designing with visionOS, they really don't know that you're really designing for 1.5 meters away, because Apple is just reducing that so they don't have to think about it, which has its good, it's okay. And volumes are just basically empty containers that people can throw 3D content in. And spaces are the desktop. A shared space is do I have? Yes. Okay, and spaces are basically the desktop. Spaces, you can use things together. They just try to mirror that as best as you can. But scalable immersion is, while windows, volumes, and spaces are sweet, scalable immersion is the real game changer, because it actually allows us to define focus in, command space. So basically, as I stated earlier, there's mixed immersion, which is AR. There's progressive immersion, which is AR plus VR. And then there's full immersion, which is just VR. And the beautiful thing about all of these things is that you can go between them instantaneously. And because you can do that, this gives you a lot of opportunity to actually pull people's focus, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Another thing that I think Apple did well, but I've been going kicking and screaming, is that they want a hands-first approach, and I think it's actually working quite a bit. We have the built-in haptics of our fingers. It doesn't really break immersion. And while it can be kind of limiting to users, I think at the end of the day, it just makes a lot of sense and to make it more holistic for people to adopt. And at the cornerstone of everything Apple has done with this vocabulary, they have basically made everything human-centered. So you're not designing for locomotion in XR, which for Apple Vision Pro, which kind of sucks, but everything is perfectly gathered around the user, and this deliberate decision has made designing for it a lot easier and allowed us to stretch our legs. But AVP at the moment is lacking. At the end of the day, right now, it's kind of clear that visionOS is not necessarily complete at the moment. Design standards are kind of smashed together, and it just kind of feels like Apple is as lost as we are at the moment, and that's okay. And that makes me feel actually better, because if Apple said they knew better than us in every direction, we would be kind of screwed. But at the end of the day, we are still stuck in this Apple ecosystem. We're still going to this app-to-app model, which doesn't really work. And all of these things like gaze pinch and all this stuff has just been kind of an ergonomic nightmare that only speaks to the multi-touch era. And the thing that also kind of kneecaps us is that Apple prioritizes their own formats and ignores interoperability. And they're going to be fighting that as long as they possibly can until their monetization strategy needs to change. And at the end of the day, Apple Vision Pro at the moment, the value prop is not there because we're just a sea of ports. That's all it is. And volumes are neat, but sometimes they're not necessarily practical. And at the end of the day, we're just seeing, like, the Apple Vision Pro is nothing more than an iPad strapped onto your face. But we can change that. Now, Apple Vision Pro, visionOS 2 is really amazing because now they're starting to have these windows that can connect to other windows, and you can actually establish flows in real space. They're taking volumes, which is just an empty little box, and you can actually make it relative to other parts of content and yourself. And it also has adaptive and gravity-aligned management. So these things are evolving slowly but well. Kind of controversial. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Their new hand controls are getting better. At the end of the day, though, they are kind of hijacking the hand UI from other applications for their own. But what else is new? That's kind of what Meta does. And then there's the thing that has got me super juiced is that they are now allowing object spatial tracking and anchored UI interactions. So this is just going to help immersion quite a bit and actually give a lot more value to the product. And the thing I'm probably most excited about is probably WebXR. I'm a big fan of interoperability, and I think that the ability for us to have experiences and share experiences with people over the web, I think has been the standard for a while, and it's just going to get better. So let's talk about my blind idealism real quick. Future goggles. So I think if we want to get better and if we want to be successful in the future of XR design, everything is kind of contingent on accessibility and aiding a user's perspective. Everything, if we want to get people in headset and we want people to adopt our products, we need to meet them where they are. Right now, hardware is too expensive, it's just too ergonomically painful, and we need to create things that can work not only on headset, but on mobile device and all these things to get people in. And it kind of all starts with perspective. Now, I was talking to some individuals who have been creating some amazing XR experiences, and one of the things that we've been discussing is that a lot of flat media today has been basically a bunch of creatives dictating people's perspectives. You watch a commercial, they use a camera that follows a car and tells you how cool it is and how much you want to buy it. But basically, that's kind of the medium of flat. You have this defined frame, it kind of locks you in, but it allows us to take perspective and paint perspective with a lens, or it makes us fill in the gaps like in a painting, and it makes us have to kind of puts us in a box of another person's perspective. But in XR, our job is not to dictate perspective. Our job is to aid perspective. And because of that, the future, the way we build is going to have to be around the person. It's not going to be around the frame in which they look. And this is going to aid a whole host of things. First of all, we have to be, we're going to probably have to prioritize comfort and ergonomics over fidelity, which is completely fine. But we're going to have to understand how and when to trigger things. CTAs aren't just going to be this thing that follows people around. You're going to make them sick or you're going to make them hate it. You're going to have to reprioritize in how you pull their focus as a designer. And that is going to be very, very tricky. But with that, it's going to be really sweet. And everything has to be multimodal. So what do I mean by multimodal? Well, that's kind of a word that a lot of people use. But in a way, multimodal is we need to design our products to span a whole different set of rooms, lifestyles, disabilities, and stuff like that. And I think the future of XR design is going to be designed around the human body. And so because of that, our content is going to have to be dynamic. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have designed for mobile applications. Designing for just one platform, like a Vision, for iOS, was a nightmare, let alone Android, iPad, all of that stuff. I worked on teams of thousands of designers, led them, and we could basically prioritize one. But now we have to prioritize multiple different headsets and multiple different screen resolutions and multiple different experiences based on multiple different types of human bodies. And this is where the future, I believe, of AI and design systems will come into play. I think designers in the future will no longer be the designers we understand today. Instead, they're going to be design architects. And as a design architect, your job isn't to make pretty things. It's part of it. It's really about understanding the foundations and then allowing AI to tailor itself to the individual experience. And as design architects, we will have to have create firm foundations in depth, color, shaders, light, sound, haptics, and immersion. And all of these things are going to be incredibly in depth. But the way we work with AI to tailor these to people's experiences will basically determine the products in which we launch. And I think in order to get there, we need to adopt interoperable standards. And I think that's the only way forward to actually creating a successful product in XR. And I think this has already happened today. I mean, you have the Kronos Group, you have WebXR, and GLTF, OpenGL, OpenXR. All of these things are the future, and I personally believe that progressive web applications will also get us there. Again, I do not think this app-to-app model, like Unity-to-Unity model of this world building is the future. I think it has to come from the web, and I think it has to have open standards. And I think the new monetization is going to be coming up quite quickly from that. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We do thank you, Daniel, very much. We do have time for Q&A. I know that Farhan has something he wants to speak to. Farhan, if you want to come up front. I want to start off asking a question. You know, when I had a HoloLens agency startup working with Microsoft about 10 years ago, we really struggled to educate user experience designers on dealing with 3D. In fact, a lot of folks that we talked to were hesitant to want to go from 2D to 3D. It was not something that they were particularly inspired to do, or they really struggled with that notion of going from a two-dimensional to a three-dimensional canvas. And we often found that working with people in the film industry and in the theater industry who deal with set design and spatial layout and props were actually more akin to working in 3D design than some of the people who have spent their careers working in 2D. How do you educate 2D information architects and user experience designers? What's the right way to bring them into the 3D world? It's something that this industry needs, and we have this large creative brain trust in 2D designers. How do we educate them into the 3D world?
Well, it's how did we bring print people from the print medium into the digital medium? It just took them kicking and screaming, honestly. I think that like our products need to mature. I think the way that we, teach people is mature. I mean, I think right now, in order for you to be a successful XR designer or 3D designer, you have to learn a lot of things. I think AI is going to help with retopology, UV unwrapping, optimization, and I think that the standardization of these tools will evolve, but I'm starting to see, like, the more I work in this industry and the more I see a lot of younger designers come up, they are a lot more eager to jump in and learn these things, but I think there's just a lot of, like, old guard who just doesn't want to do it. And I think it's just a matter of just learning a new craft, unfortunately.
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. You just mentioned some of the challenges with the app-based paradigm. I would love for you to expand upon that and discuss perhaps what you see replacing that, if that's WebXR or something else.
Yeah, so basically, like, app adoption has kind of gone down the tube and has been down the tube for a while. There's been a couple of players who dominate that space. A lot of the time, if you look at a lot of mobile applications, it's kind of a graveyard. And people, when they use applications, they may pick it up and the retention rate is incredibly low. I think that for a while, the biggest war on the mobile market wasn't necessarily the app war, it was the browser war. And what I mean by the browser war is that people would go into like Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, and they have their own browsers. So everyone was just trying to get them onto the web in their own way. And so this whole amalgamation of all these applications doesn't really work because it just kind of, especially in XR, because it just pulls you out of immersion and it's just a slog. Now, I personally do believe the future of these platforms is going to be OS first. And I think that operating systems are going to, unfortunately, are going to build and prioritize different features of different products live on their desktop in their application. I think the future of computing isn't going to be this app-to-app market. The monetization strategy is going to have to change completely, but I think it already is because of Europe and stuff like that. But I think the future of the app market is going to be these micro-progressive web applications that are built or intertwined within the operating system that's kind of built on, I guess, visionOS templates and stuff like that, or in AI. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. So are you saying, I mean, do you envision a future where people are just opening Safari all the time and not downloading and opening apps? Like, I'm
No,
not entirely clear what you mean.
The way that so what was it? What was Google's recent? Sorry, there's just so much crap. The way that I see it is that if you're going to say I want to go, hey Siri, I want to go to Bora Bora, right? They're going to prioritize applications that will build live on your browser, pulling from Airbnb, pulling from all these things, and like take those and craft applications from them. I don't think it's like, hey, I want to go to Bora Bora, where I better find the best application, or I better find it on the web. I think it's going to amalgamate what's on the web, what's these applications that people are building, and build a custom application to you. That's the way that's the way I see it.
So dynamically created.
Yes,
app.
100%. It's already happening. AI, I mean, and it just makes monetization, like monetary sense from these producers as well. Thanks, bud.
All right. Hi. Thanks a lot. My name's Faye, and I am the tech lead of YouTube XR. So what kind of hit me was when you were talking about we kind of live in a sea of ports. I hope my question isn't offensive to engineers, but I feel like I run into that a lot where, or maybe it's a big company thing. I think engineers kind of prioritize reusability, or like we have an iPad app. YouTube has an iPad app. We exist. Just throw it up there. In your experience working with lots of different people, how can you, I guess, like what are your arguments to help, bring this, volumetric, immersive, spatial kind of design first to kind of these groups? Does that make sense? It's kind of a meta question.
No. I'm going to try to articulate. So you're saying, like, okay, if I'm talking trash on ports, which is true.
No, it's great, but that's the thing. Like, I agree with you. Or like my team.
Sure.
So my team, sort of within the larger org of YouTube, is specifically looking at XR.
Sure.
But we sort of have to make our case for like why we should exist.
Sure. I mean, I think that right now there's a transitionary period of the flat world going to 3D. I'm like a lot of idealists who just want volumetric content going crazy. I want my own personal freedom in this world. But let's be realistic. The majority of people can't afford headsets that have that kind of compute, and it just takes a long time to define those patterns and structures. But what you can do, especially at YouTube, because I adore YouTube, is that just make a usable YouTube app. Even if it's a port, who gives a shit? Like, just bring it in and then figure out how to build it off that and figure out your foundations. Because, like, if I have to bounce through 5 different applications to watch a YouTube video on the Vision Pro, that sucks. But I just want to have a nice ergonomic experience. But then, because of YouTube, which is an amazing product, it has so many amazing, rich features that are shoved into so many niche little corners of the product. Now you can just rip that open and just make it part of the entire experience. So, like, just understand what you have to bury because of this kind of real estate right here. And you don't need to bury it anymore. You have to prioritize it with hierarchy, but like you can give us all of that and help us like see all that content in real time. You don't need to bury it anymore, which is really cool. And like, yeah, comments, like related videos, merch, all of this stuff can be intertwined with the experience. And I think like at the end of the day, YouTube and Google, the only thing they care about is money for the most part. You can really make that a cash cow, especially like with getting like content out there. So, and then you can also entice people for creating more spatial content as well, or even make it kind of using AI. You can try to separate them. So there's a lot of cool stuff. It's just kind of like get your proof of concept or what you have out there, figure out what the core value props of YouTube is, split those apart, and then figure out how to hammer on them to see what works, and then start bringing in, like everyone else, like 1 foot at a time spatial content.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Yeah.
Howdy. Thank you for bringing up the multimodal question. That's been something I've been trying to work through in my years working in mixed reality game applications. And I know that I came to the same conclusion you did, that AI eventually is going to be shaping a lot of the design choices that we are making, because there'll be spaces we'll never see, is what the experiences will take place in. But in the midterm, I had to come up with some sort of array of situations that had to be able to be testable. And I was wondering, so, like for me, it was airplane tray up to street size to on a cafe versus a bedroom. So are you aware of any midterm guidelines or best practices for spatial design that does take the space into account, or do you believe that it's falling back to essentially abstract notions of wall, table, things that are simple and testable?
That's a good question. I think, Meta did a lot of amazing work in that space. They still do. I think that VR or XR foundations is something to invest in and think about. I remember I worked on a couple of projects, especially in Unity, and I went to my developers and I said, here's my color tokens, here's my depth grid. Like, can you just put this in the code? They're like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, and I had to explain how everything is based off of a color value token, everything's based on this variable based on distance. So if I switch one thing, everything else switches in the scenes. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. I don't know how to do that, or it would take me a long time to do that. But we've had this in mobile for a while, but it hasn't come to XR yet, but it needs to. Because like trying to create, it's kind of like back in the day when we had adaptive websites, where everything was just fixed, and then you brought it down to like different like resolutions and stuff like that, and then eventually we made it kind of like liquid with adaptive. I think that's where this is going. So I would say just like, figure out your core structures of like your depth, like foundations and color stuff, and play. That's the way I'm trying to go, and I'm trying to build tools to create. It's still tough though. Thanks, bud. Hey, bud.
I want to use the stage of Daniel here as an opportunity to honor him with the Top XR Mastermind Award. I strongly recommend that you check his YouTube channel, reference library, breakdown of many different XR apps and games, and he really inspired like over 7,000 people on XR Bootcamp, developers and professionals, decided to nominate him as the Top XR Mastermind. And I would love to use the stage as an opportunity to share with you.